the side effect of doing these things to take care of our ovarian aging is also just feeling good now. So it's like, it's not like it's taking some medication that makes you feel horrible now and it's going to save you later. No, you feel great
Mm.
now, you feel great later. There's really no downside. And especially if you take it in that approach of, not getting overwhelmed with it, taking one thing at a time, it's just adding joy to your life. It's adding resilience to your life. It's all good.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pelvic Pulse podcast. You guys, we have a repeat guest that I could not wait to have back on. This is Dr. Miranda Naylor. Yay for being here. Thanks so much for just, showing up. And I can't wait to dive into all the things with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always love talking with you. So
Same.
it's like we might as well just record it.
I know. I feel like, well, just for the audience, like, we go on a walk every now and again, and it's always so nice to update each other on what we're doing, what we're offering, what we're learning. And yeah, I honestly wish I could just record those conversations too, because I think people could learn from that.
hmm
But okay, so going back to that walk that we did, you said something to me that I was like, I want to know more. Actually, there were two things, two big takeaways. I was like, I want to know more about this ovarian longevity. What does that even mean? Maybe we start there and we can go into the second thing later.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. Well, I could talk on this all day long. I love talking
Yeah.
about this. Basically, what ovarian longevity means is it's supporting our ovarian health and not just from like a hormone standpoint or from kind of the output we're used to thinking about them, but really supporting the longevity of our reproductive health because there are so many benefits that come with that. We're used to talking about menopause as this decline and the lack of hormones, and really we don't really talk about the piece when we have some power behind it, meaning we can support our longevity from the beginning
Mm,
and push out potentially our menopause time, our perimenopause, change the experience that we have there, but
mm.
also support our overall well-being from this focus.
I love the thought of that because I think what people might assume is that once you're out of that reproductive age, your ovaries aren't really good for anything. But new research is out, right? Where
Mhm.
it has a completely different role. Can you walk us through what the role of the ovaries are, maybe from like puberty and then through into postmenopause?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. So from puberty on, I mean, and just to even go beyond that, we have our ovaries since we're born, right? Like
Yeah,
they're
yeah, start
there,
at the beginning.
they're hanging out. And they start kind of coming online a little bit in puberty. That's when they start producing hormones. And that's when we're starting to think that, okay, we are, reproductively active. We have this roller coaster of hormones that starts to happen initially, and then it starts to hit a good rhythm. And that's what creates our menstrual cycle. Again, kind of the thing that we see from that is our period. But there's so much happening under the surface to have this sort of orchestra of hormones that's happening in what should be a very regular cyclical pattern until we start hitting perimenopause, where things sort of go back to puberty again a little bit, that things
Mhm.
get crazy in our hormone production. And then it's that progression into menopause where, that the crazy hormones start to steady out, start to drop, and then kind of things go to sleep in a sense. So that's what the thought is of our hormone production isn't really happening anymore. And that's where they're done in a sense, or that's what we've thought. But now there is really new research emerging all the time, which is so fascinating to me that the ovaries are linked with stress really heavily. Like there's a
Mm.
nervous system basically in our ovaries. And
Mm.
so even through perimenopause, especially, our ovaries are like so tied with our stress levels and our body's perception of stress. So it's very likely there's a sort of a back and forth um, relationship there.
Mhm.
And then even in menopause, there's new research to say that our ovaries take on sort of an immune support role. And that's still, very emerging. I don't really know the whole story then there, but I think
Yeah.
there's so much more that we just don't know and understand about what our ovaries do. And the way that I look at them too is that they're not just hormone producers. They're very like intuitive tissues, sort of. They're very sensitive. They're sensitive to our surroundings. They're very full of mitochondria, which are like our energy producers. And they do these really incredible things. So I think just like the myth that our hormones are set in stone, that are just like, oh, my hormones, I hate them, whatever. It's the thing that I hear so much from people. And then
Mm.
really it's a reflection of our cellular health, of our ovarian health. And so there's actually so much more that we can do as part of our hormone reproductive picture.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think one of the things that sticks out to me is this like stress and ovarian relationship. And it just makes me think about, travel, getting sick, just everyday high level stress. If a woman is experiencing that, that can either delay ovulation and make their follicular phase a lot longer, right?
Hmm.
Or they have an ovulatory cycle. And that just is like, duh, that makes so much sense.
Hmm.
So much sense. But to think of them as having um, their own nervous system of some kind, like that's really fascinating.
Yeah. And it's, you're right. I think the most common thing we think of is, oh, the stress and then the delayed period,
Yeah.
or, we didn't ovulate that time. But also on a lower level, what I see from a lot of women is like heightened PMS,
Mm.
feeling like, they're just more moody during their cycle. Things like that can also be a reflection of our ovarian health and that stress that they're perceiving. And so, yeah, it has a really big hand in things. And I know that sometimes that can feel sort of disempowering to people. They're like, okay,
Mm.
great. What stress? I can't just quit my job. I can't just, give my kids away or whatever. I heard one person say that and it cracked me up.
That's really
But
funny.
but what we can do is really still build our capacity
Yes.
and change our perception of stress. Because think of the one person who is just like always on edge and always stressed out, and they're literally just like going to the grocery store, finding a parking spot. And that to them is like, oh my God, this person's in my way. Versus another person who's like, oh, cool. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
that person took my spot. No big deal. Oh, I'm running a little bit late. Okay. It is what it is. The way that you show up in life can also change your body's perception of stress too. So there's actually a lot that you can do
Mm.
there.
Yes, yes, yes. Like I love the idea of expanding your capacity to deal with these more micro stressors of an everyday living experience
Mm-hmm.
versus like if I don't know why this came to me, but just like if someone passed away in your family, like that's majorly stressful, or someone's
Yeah.
ill. Yeah, we can learn to let things slide off and
Mm-hmm.
slip off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you, yeah, share a little bit more about like these things that we can do to help our ovarian longevity, especially I think in perimenopause. I just had a woman coming on to speak about that, Joanna Swanson, in the last episode, and she actually went through medical menopause. So if we're thinking more so along the lines of we still have our ovaries, we still have our uterus, like what can we do to improve our ovarian health and longevity, which could hopefully, I assume, right, help with the experience of perimenopause not being so chaotic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, the earlier the better on this. So there's really no like time where then you should do it. The earlier the better. So if you're listening to this and this sounds intriguing to you, start to have this focus now, because I do think time will tell also to see how much we can really do to change women's experiences, because this is still fairly new. And I think it's going to be women going through it and just seeing how it's different going forward. Um, but yeah, some of the big things. One piece of it is looking at the things that accelerate aging. Because actually, I should stop here to say, I'm not talking about just not going through menopause
Yeah.
or like doing it when you're 70. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's realistic. It's really what I'm talking about is slowing down more rapid aging.
Mm.
So if things are more accelerated, then that's where the concern is, where women can go through early menopause, early perimenopause, have a worse experience through this. That's what we're more concerned about. So that's the lens that we're looking through. And with that, some of the things that can speed up the aging process and just, almost like create more wear and tear on ourselves, a good way of thinking about it
Mm,
would be toxins. All the environmental chemicals that we come in contact with, the things in our, cleaning products and beauty products and the plastics and all of that, those create inflammation and, accelerate aging. And even things like heavy metals would be in that list. Inflammation is another big one, which can be as a result of toxins, but it also can be a result of foods that we're reacting to, or just
mm,
inflammatory things, the bad oils and the processed foods, and just having imbalance there.
mhm,
Part of that can just be the stress, again, that mental emotional stress, the stress in our body. If we're dealing with high intensity exercise all the time without recovery, if we have an infection or something hidden that our body's dealing with, that will absolutely turn that process up. One thing that I hear, unfortunately, all too common are autoimmune conditions, and even things like COVID can be big drivers there to accelerate the aging process and put someone at greater risk of, going through early menopause, early perimenopause. So those are some big ones. Even, to go back to foods a little bit too, our insulin and our blood sugar levels,
mm.
those are like little mini stresses throughout our day, and it affects how our cortisol shows up too in our day. So having blood sugar that's just a roller coaster and going all over the place, that can be another really big driver for accelerated aging too. And then I mentioned not getting recovery, just not getting good sleep, having really poor sleep in general. Sleep is where our body heals and turns
Right.
over cells and recovers. So if we're really not getting good sleep, if we're a shift worker, things like that over a long period of time, then that can absolutely be another big driver of accelerated aging.
Mm.
And then on the flip side of that, like I love talking about like in balance
Yes.
together, then a lot of the things we can do are the opposite of that. So
Yes.
getting rid of those toxins as much as we can, supporting our sleep, supporting our stress response, working on our nervous system, just feeling more calm and safe. Those are massive.
Hmm.
And getting, balanced blood sugar, consistent meals, getting a good amount of protein and fiber, basics that our body just needs to be able to process things. Fiber helps get toxins out of our system. So that's super important. And then getting color in our diet also from plants. Those are antioxidants. And antioxidants are the things that reverse aging and that oxidative process on our cells.
Mm.
So getting lots of color, getting a variety in your food, maybe taking additional antioxidants also. But I see that as sort of like the next level of things where there's so much that we can do just within our diet, within our lifestyle that can really change this and again create some balance to be able to slow down more rapid aging,
Hmm.
and getting good the nutrients that we need too. Nutrient deficiencies can be another factor here, and so just getting enough food, which we don't normally think about, but getting enough in general and enough of the right things so that you're not deficient in something big where our cells have to work extra hard. If we're super low in iron, vitamin D is another really common one that I see. Not to point anything or foreshadow, but just I see them all the time. That's why I mention it.
Yeah.
Not getting the balance of, healthy fats. A lot of us are low in magnesium because our food system is very depleted in magnesium. So those are some of the big ones too, that filling in those gaps can also be really supportive.
That is all so, so helpful. I think you did a really good job actually on one of your recent reels, like putting a lot of these nuggets in. And
Mhm.
you're so, so right. I completely agree with that. There are so many things that we could do on a day-to-day basis that's more like lifestyle and diet geared, where we wouldn't necessarily have to take, I mean, those are some massive shifts I think for people to think about. And over time maybe that all feels so overwhelming to hear all at once, but you don't have to do it all at once, right? Like it gets to be um drizzled in. And it's so funny that you brought up the vitamin D and
Mhm.
iron because something new that I wanted to try on the podcast was to have you look at my labs. And this is labs that I did with Function back in January. And so I'm due to do them over again now-ish. Um, and there are some deficiencies. And I just wanted to see like if you spotted anything and maybe use me as a little bit of a case study. So I'm going to share a screen. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you can pop in over there and check out this data that I have. This feels vulnerable for some reason. Ay, ay,
I can imagine. Yeah. Well, and just to touch on, I appreciate you saying that. Like, that was a big synopsis of all the things. But yeah, it doesn't have to be everything overnight. It can be one little thing. And starting with the most basic things, honestly, usually has the most power. So if you're
Yes.
not sleeping well, for example, okay, focus there. Just work on getting good sleep. If it's, you're feeling stressed out, okay, start to build your capacity, work on your nervous system. And those things, I mean, those are probably the two biggest ones I'd say to start with, because those have so much power and then are going to change everything else in your life with this ripple effect. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you can just literally start with a baby little micro step.
Like I'm just so excited because what you'll see here on my function lab stuff is like, okay, we're doing pretty well for the most part. I do have high cholesterol, um, that I think is mostly genetic. That's on both mom and dad's side. And then when we actually get down to like metabolic, my leptin is low. And then my iron is also above range in saturation, but my ferritin is, oh wait, you said my ferritin is a little low, even though it's marked as in range. But
Hmm.
like you said, vitamin D, low.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's super common. So that's why I was just mentioning, because I see it all the time, especially for women who have been cycling, for
Yeah.
many years. So yeah, iron, for you, it's interesting because your iron saturation is a little bit high, but your ferritin is a little bit low. And even here with function, which tends to have better ranges for things, it still is marked as normal, even though I would consider it low.
Hmm.
I like to see ferritin more at least 50, if not like 70.
Okay.
So, and that's our indicator of iron stores in our cells, which is really important for, our body's ability to create energy, move oxygen around our body. So, yeah. And then vitamin D as well, another really common one that I like to see 50 to 80.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Y-
a little bit
I
low
mean,
there.
it's a little bit low for sure. And it is interesting though, from that it hasn't changed in the past two tests, but what has changed in the last 6 months, for example, like if you're thinking, oh my God, I have all these things that are low, or I need to work on like my diet and lifestyle. The one thing that I've really tried to focus on is getting outside more. So if I wonder if the reason why we're all so low in vitamin D is like we're working inside and not spending enough time outside in the sun. So yeah, me getting out on my morning walk and then an afternoon walk maybe, and then maybe even an evening walk. I'm trying to get like the different levels of exposure throughout the day while also just getting off my ass, you know?
Yeah, I know vitamin D deficiency is something that I see really commonly lately. And I do think that being indoors more and wearing sunscreen more, like a lot of us are worried about skin cancer and wrinkles. So where our sun exposure is very different. Also, there are different factors. Genetics can play a role where some people just have a harder time producing vitamin D because it's something that we create. It's basically actually a hormone
Mhm.
that we make from UV exposure to our skin. And some people have a harder time with that. And then also other nutrient deficiencies sometimes play into it also. So
Yeah.
it's very common. And one that's, I think, getting more sun and being outdoors more is a great approach to it. It's also one that's easy to supplement for people who are like, I
Right.
just can't get on top of it. Easy to get a little bit more.
That is like the one supplement that I do have too. Yeah, my mom's like terrified of getting osteoporosis. So she's always been like, here, take your vitamin D. And then I lived in Seattle for 5 years, and that also, I think, was like not good for my vitamin D levels. And I think it's been low since then, to be honest. I don't remember what it was like in high school at all. But yeah, I found that really, really fascinating. And I think genetically speaking too, like I have darker skin typically, so it is maybe a little bit more challenging. But yes, my omega 3s are also a little bit low, and I've been encouraged. Oh, I was gonna say too with the iron. and like blood building essentially. Because if you're looking at these labs, you don't know necessarily what my goals are, right? Like my
Mhm.
goals as a 36-year-old who is still cycling regularly, who does want to get pregnant soon and also has never gotten pregnant, so doesn't really have like proof of concept. And it's like I'd like to not necessarily optimize anything per se. I because I feel good. The thing is I feel good on a regular basis.
Mhm.
My body's not in pain. I can function well. I sleep well. I feel like I get enough to eat during the day, but maybe I'm not. And because also my leptin is low, that's something interesting to me. Like I still haven't been, it's a weird puzzle piece for me personally. But yeah, it's like, okay, I feel pretty good. So maybe it's just a matter of time, right? When we actually do start messing around and finding out, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the approach that I would take with that is like you don't have to have something wrong necessarily to optimize, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And especially when we are in that state of preconception where we're really trying to optimize things, make sure everything's going to work as well as possible to get pregnant, to have a healthy pregnancy, but then also my biggest goal for people is to have a really healthy kid too, because
Yeah.
how we take care of our health, through the pregnancy and all of that also changes their health, or impacts it. So yeah, I think that, looking at things beforehand is a great idea, even if we feel good. And it's great that we feel good, obviously, and listening to that and trusting that. But then, yeah, looking at this type of testing can be really helpful to then say, okay, how can I, tweak some little things and maybe, support myself a little bit more, in
Exactly.
certain areas. Yeah.
Exactly.
Your magnesium is on here too, which we
Oh,
mentioned
yes.
earlier, and that looks good. And it's a red blood cell magnesium, which is the one that you want to check for
Mm.
this. And even as we're going along, maybe I could even point out the ones that I'd look at,
Yeah.
especially for ovarian health, like methylmalonic acid is one that no
Mm.
one really knows about, but it's the one that we
Yeah.
always check for B12 status. So B12 is
Ah.
really important. Homocysteine is the other one that we check for that,
Mm.
which I think was maybe farther up.
Mm.
Um, and that gives us an idea of B12 and folate deficiency as well. You look great on both of those. So that's,
Cool.
nice to see. Okay, great. You're getting a good amount of B vitamins. Those are really supportive of, getting pregnant and our overall health. Some of the other ones that I like to look at, yeah, let's see. Yeah, you have like your DHEA level and your cortisol level. Those are our adrenals. So our
Mm.
adrenal hormones tell us, our, our stress levels too high, something like that kind of gives us some idea there. And DHEA sulfate also is a precursor to testosterone
Yep.
and actually plays a big part with like egg quality, in preconception. So that's a great one to see in a normal range. And it does go down with age. So for those who are getting pregnant later in their 30s, like sometimes it's an issue, but not always.
Cool.
So yeah, that looks great. Thyroid, always important for our overall health.
Hmm.
Um, I think it was farther up the some of the metabolic markers.
Mm.
Um, those are, let's see, yeah, I mean, like your blood sugar, we talked about the insulin roller coaster is super important. It is interesting, the low leptin. I've seen this in other people too, and it's one of those ones where there's a very clear correlation when it's high. We're concerned about leptin resistance, where basically like your ability to feel satisfied with eating,
Right.
you're not as sensitive to it. When it's low, I don't know how significant that is.
Right.
You said it was interesting. Do you feel like you have like a low appetite, or
Um,
what's it look like?
no, I mean, I maybe a little bit. I do eat like regardless though.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually noticing like out of curiosity last night thinking about this because I'm supposed to get my period tomorrow or Saturday, sometime this weekend, and usually around this time I'm insatiable.
Mm.
And last night, it's interesting too, like when I know I'm gonna go move my body, like I take a dance class in the evenings and it's late. And if I'm eating even just a couple of hours before, I feel like crap moving, it just doesn't feel
Hmm.
comfortable.
Hmm.
Maybe I need to make better choices on what I'm eating beforehand. But then it's like, yeah, at the very end of the night, It's an experiment that I'm playing with too that actually has to do with the vitamin D if we want to get a little, bring in some of the woo science. In human design, I have indirect light determination. So
Mm.
to consume energy, whether that's food or information, or people's energies, I like doing that in the evening or under cloud cover. So I do find that fascinating. Like maybe vitamin D levels being low is pretty normal for an indirect light person, but also at the end of the night or at the end of the day, it shouldn't be a problem for me to eat something and then go to bed. And and be curious. I was curious of experimenting. If I go to bed a little hungry, how do I sleep? And how do I wake up? Am I actually still hungry again, or am I like cool and or not? And so like last night, I didn't have like a full-on dinner, but I had a big lunch and I had like more of a snack before going to dance. And then I came back home and I was hungry a little bit. And I was like, maybe I want like half a banana or something, or maybe like some toast with peanut butter or whatever. But I ended up not. And I still slept pretty well. And I woke up hungry this morning. And so I have my normal breakfast, which James makes, and it's just eggs and chicken sausage and spinach with cilantro and maybe a hash brown or something. But um, yeah, that's what I typically eat with my decaf coffee now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So,
it's so interesting with the human design. I love seeing that piece. And
mm,
it's like don't really know, right? With like the scientific labs with that and like the energy piece, but that's really interesting. Yeah, I maybe
it
there's something there. Yeah,
totally. Like
love it.
when I told my human design teacher, Sam, about going to Seattle for undergrad, she was like, "Oh, you went to a cloudy place to consume a lot of information and learn and get an undergraduate degree." I was like, "Yep." She's like, "Hmm." Like that checks. Because I
Yeah.
did follow, like I followed a projector strategy to even get to UW. And that was like by invitation. I had no idea that UW even existed. And my friend was like, you should apply and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so that's why I ended up there. And I loved it when I visited and decided to go. And I had a great time and I learned a lot. So
Awesome.
yeah, it is really, really fascinating. But
Mhm.
yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to call out on here or
Maybe if
should
you go
we?
back up,
Yeah.
looking at the female hormones, I could
Hmm.
touch on too. I don't think you had anything too crazy, but just to like
Right.
for kind of
Yeah.
teaching purposes. Yeah, so we could talk about AMH. So anti-Mullerian hormone is a hormone that we often are looking at for like, I put it in air quotes, how many eggs do we have left? Basically, it's basically a hormone that goes along with follicles developing into an egg that will be ovulated and does give us some information about, where we are in our reproductive years and, maybe how close, although it also can change with where we are in our cycle. Our vitamin D status actually impacts this. If we're breastfeeding, it will definitely be different. So, if we're just like not even ovulating. So, yeah. But this, I mean, your level is normal, which is great. And the biggest thing here is in my book is not freaking out about this number if it doesn't look great, knowing that there's some nuance to it. But it is an important piece to the puzzle.
Hmm.
Some of the other things we look at in terms of again, that conversation of like, how much time do I have left to get pregnant? 'Cause it's something I'm asked about a lot. Would be FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. This is one that tends to go up through perimenopause and really hits the like diagnostic point, maybe like halfway through perimenopause or so, sort of midway. But it is one that does give us some information too about, again, that follicle growth, how many eggs that we have that are, growing to potentially ovulate.
Hmm.
So that's important to look at. LH or luteinizing hormone is also important to look at for our hormonal health and seeing how that compares to FSH. Those two can give us some information about like our androgens or, if we're high in testosterone, things like that.
Hmm.
And then estradiol, of course, is our, you know, famous, beautiful, sex hormone in women. It's the like activating hormone that's sort of in balance with progesterone. And so that, of course, is important to look at. Your level is normal here too. I do like to look at this at day 3, and this can give us some insight too although of course it's changing a lot throughout our cycle. And so it's not, one hormone level is not the only thing to look at there. But it's a great piece of things.
Right. It's like a
And then,
snapshot.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then tying that in together with the symptoms that we're having and really understanding what our body is telling us, what the hormones do, can then also kind of fill in that picture when I'm talking with people. We're talking about, okay, are your boobs sore in certain places in your cycle? Or do you have bad PMS? Okay, those are giving us some insight into, okay, maybe your estrogen is running high at certain times, maybe your progesterone is running low, things like that, so that we
Mm.
can put a lot of context in there.
Ugh, I love it. I think, yeah, that's so nice to hear because it is such a pattern that you're looking for. It's not that one like singular thing that's off. It's gonna be a full picture
Hmm.
of the human and their actual experience
Yeah,
on top of these labs, which just help paint the picture even deeper.
absolutely. Yeah.
So cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking, I'm gonna close that share. So speaking of like this time of, I mean, okay, pause. I love that you said that it's not about pushing off menopause to a later stage. Like that's not the point
Mhm.
of slowing down the aging so much that we push this off. It's like, can you maybe describe that a little bit as well? And then I know that there's something new that you've used recently called Menotime. And can you explain what that is and how it can help with how we think about living our lives right now?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the goal is not to not go through menopause. It is a normal, natural process. And my approach to it is really, knowing that there are risks that come up with being in menopause. With
Mm,
having these low hormones, we have greater risk of other issues with our health, like cardiovascular health, osteoporosis, dementia, that when we're taking this approach of really trying to live our best life, extend our health span, where we're feeling amazing into our later years. The things we want to do are go along with that, basically. So, how can we decrease our risk of having a heart attack? How can we decrease our risk of breaking a hip, having to be in the hospital, and then dying from some complication? Like that is not how we want to go out.
oh, yeah.
And, if we can feel amazing, be independent, as much as we don't think about this in our 30s, it's so important when we're in our 80s and 90s. And so that's part of the big conversation in my mind. It's also feeling great wherever we are. So, the side effect of doing these things to take care of our ovarian aging is also just feeling good now. So it's like, it's not like it's taking some medication that makes you feel horrible now and it's going to save you later. No, you feel great
Mm,
now, you feel great later. There's really no downside. And especially if you take it in that approach of, not getting overwhelmed with it, taking one thing at a time, it's just adding joy to your life. It's adding resilience to your life. It's all good. So yeah, so that's
mhm.
where I like to talk about it and tell people about it. That's the reason.
I love that.
With that, yeah. So the new test that just came out this year is called Menotime, and it looks at three of those tests we just talked about. So AMH, FSH, and estradiol. And it puts those in with some, observational data also. So you basically fill out a quick questionnaire about your stress levels, about, what cycle symptoms you're having, things like that, and it compares your data. It's machine learning, so basically kind of like AI, and comparing your data against 1,000 women that were tracked over a long period of time, and can give you your estimated ovarian age and your estimated time to menopause, which is wild. And this is like why I mentioned with AMH, it's really just looking at one piece of it. But now we have the ability to have a bigger picture of having, again, this very validated estimate of where you stand. And, if it looks younger than your age, fantastic, good for you, keep doing what you're doing. But if it's more rapid, then you know ahead of time, ideally, and you can do something about that. For example, to use my, you were very vulnerable to share your labs, to share my own. I did my own Menotime recently. I'm 42. Did I just age myself? I'm 41 now. But my ovarian age, I'm just, see, just just think ahead, and then you're always feeling
Yeah.
I'm 41, but my ovarian age was 43, and it was 2 years ahead of where I'm at now.
Mm,
And, not ideal to see that, obviously, but I'm still really glad that I did that test and saw that because now I can say, okay, wow. So I'm doing some things right, but I'm also doing some things not necessarily wrong, but some other aspects of my life could be increasing aging.
mm,
There are also other factors. It's not always just our lifestyle. There's genetics at play. I do have an autoimmune condition that does not help by any means. I have two young kids that, you know, offer
they're
some
kids.
stress, but also I'm eating, not the best sometimes. My example, I was saying like I eat chicken nuggets, I eat French fries sometimes, but this was my eye-opening experience to say, oh, okay, so maybe I can't afford to do that. Maybe I want to make different choices to support myself in a different way.
Mhm.
Maybe I will be more on top of eating, colorful plants like I tell everyone else to do.
Mm,
It's sometimes hard to actually do it, right? So it gives me the motivation to say, okay, this is really important to me. So what can I do to actually change this? And my goal is to get that number down, at least to my actual age,
mm,
if not a little bit lower. And we'll see, because I am, unfortunately, probably pretty close to perimenopause, if not, in the early stages. And so it probably makes it a lot harder to do it now. If
mm.
only I could have done it 10 years ago. But I think it's never too late. So, whatever I can do now will only help my longevity and my health going into the future.
It's kind of like the thought of investing and it being like the best time to invest was yesterday or 10 years
Hmm.
ago or whatever, so that you'd be in a space where you've got excess, right now to lean on. I don't
Hmm.
know if our health necessarily works like that, but I think you're right. Like after yesterday, today's the best day if you were going to make any changes because something in particular really mattered to you and you know that it would move a needle. Or this is the thing, right? Is like the testing stuff, it's data. I find it so interesting for myself, and it can be a snapshot and a reflection and a mirror held up to like what's actually happening in your life, you know? And I love that perspective of this really motivated you and matters to you, and it's a chance to be honest with ourselves.
Hmm.
Because that was something, I mean, James, I used to get mad at him, honestly, thinking about how little I was going outside during the workday.
Hmm.
And on the weekends, he'd be like, come outside, come outside. And I'd be like, no, I'm comfortable here. Like, I'm indoors. I like it. And I'm doing the house chores and you're doing the outside chores. And he's like, no, I think you need to come outside more. And he was so right. Like, it was so much better for my overall well-being to be able to be outside, and maybe it'll lift my vitamin D levels. And having started doing these walks in the past month plus. So, yeah, I really appreciate that outlook a lot. And I hope it's encouraging to people to hear that it doesn't need to be a whole, yeah, just like an overthrow of like, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm in luteal, right? So I'm like, what's the word?
Like overhaul of your whole
Overhaul.
life,
Thank you.
basically. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's like, okay, reminder again, you don't need to overhaul everything to then make a difference. But
Hmm.
yeah, maybe there's one thing that you can get a little honest with yourself and be like, oh, I could be, if this matters to me, if my vitality matters to me, if my longevity, so that I could, lift my kids and lift grandkids one day and
Hmm.
be going traveling the world and not worrying about falling and whatnot. Like, ugh, I need to say this. There were women in my dance class yesterday, which is a chair class, like sexy heels, and like there's floor work. And so you're bending down on your knees and you're rolling around and tossing your hair. And there were 4 or 5 women who were most definitely in their like 50s, 60s. And I was all about it. I was like, yes, ladies, yes, 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 to like be able to still move in this way. It was obvious, it was their first time, but to be able to continue to move in that way is so, I think, good just in general for your musculoskeletal health, but like for just your heart, for the joy that you're bringing back into your life. If you feel like it's missing right now, like let's look at that right now.
Yeah, yeah. And even our sexuality too,
Hmm.
right? Because that, again, it doesn't just go to sleep all of a sudden. We still have desires, and that could also be something that lives on into our older years. And you continue to have pleasure in so many different ways in your life. So, absolutely. And I love the analogy of the bank account. I think or investing. I think that's a great way of looking at it, that it truly is an investment. And I think it's harder if you, again, to like continue into that analogy, if you just looked at your wallet and you're like, okay, I've got 20 bucks. What do I want to do with it today? You'd make different choices than if you were like, hey, in 20 years from now, I want to have $1 million. Then how are you going to spend it? It's totally different. Are you going to In and Out versus are you going to, you're going to make food at home? You make different choices when you know what you have and what, the goal that you're going for.
Yeah.
So I agree. And I think a lot of people, in talking with other women about this, especially this new test coming out, I've heard some fear from it. Like, oh, I
Hmm.
don't know if I want to know. And I think truly where that comes from is that people don't think that it can do anything about it. And it's like almost like, when are you going to die? Oh, like that's out of my control. Why would I even want to know that? Well, but it's not when you're dying, it's when this transition is happening. And if it's faster, yeah, let's know as early as possible so you can make some changes because you absolutely can change it. Maybe not 100%. Again, you're not going through it, but you can absolutely change the trajectory.
Right.
So I personally think I'm so biased here, but I think it's so worth knowing, now or as early as we can. And especially if you're someone who like you're in your 30s, you want to have kids. I think part of the, conversation too is that women are so afraid of running out of time.
Yeah.
And so if you can actually know where you stand, then you know if that's actually an issue or not. That could actually be very reassuring, probably for a lot of women to know,
Mm.
okay, great. It says that my menopause date is this time. I'm good. I still have plenty of time. I'm going to keep taking care of my health. I'm going to keep doing things to make, my egg quality really good. And like when the time comes, the baby's going to be so healthy, but it can take away some of that stress also, really knowing and understanding what it means.
Yeah, yeah. Ugh, I'm so glad you brought that up because, yeah, I know a lot of women that are in their late 30s and they're thinking, like right now, they either need to do something about it, like freeze their eggs, or they're actually going the other direction and thinking, I'm actually going to surrender the thought of like meeting a partner and having a whole family. And it's such a tough spot to be in. And I feel for either choice that you decide to make, it's still like a huge surrendering process. And I think that's honestly part of the journey. Like, it's just another opportunity in a woman's life to not not do nothing, like not feel empowered enough to make those decisions and choices, right? Especially like I'm talking about the lifestyle changes and the diet changes, right? Going through perimenopause and into like post. And in the end, this is like a built-in rite of passage. Like you said earlier, it's natural. It's supposed to happen. But what does this version of it, what is it looking like right now in modern day time where it's been pathologized and made to be almost like evil? And it's like, no, the last episode, I phrased or she phrased it as a reckoning this time. And so, like we said earlier, right, it is an opportunity to know and then look at and then make different choices to show up better for ourselves so that we don't have to struggle through a chaotic experience. And it could be, I say this a lot on the podcast. I feel like my mom's perimenopause journey was 10 years long, so spacious, and she had zero problems. She doesn't remember a problem. And I think it's meant to be like that.
Yeah.
And I hope other people start to experience it like that, where it's not something to like fear and it's not something to pathologize or, make wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. Like there's an element too of like the grief of who you were maybe while you were
Mm-hmm.
in your reproductive era.
Mm-hmm.
And now yet there's like a whole other, I mean, this could be a whole nother episode, right? Talking about the gifts of menopause and like what does that look like for a woman who is in her queendom and just thriving in her life in this next stage.
Hmm.
I feel grateful that I have my mom and my aunt who is, 60s and then early 70s. And these women are thriving.
Amazing.
Like they work out in their own little ways and they garden and they're cooking and they're thinking about travel and they're just like wanting to spend time with family. My mom's going to become a grandmother,
Hmm.
by the end of the summer.
Hmm.
It's such a beautiful time in life. It's not something to like push off or.
Yeah. I'm so glad you bring this up because, yeah, when we're talking about, again, like pushing off menopause, it's not all bad. And I do think it is, I mean, there's a big shedding process, right? Of course, of that reproductive time in our life. And I think it is maybe something that can come with some grief.
Mhm.
It can feel really confusing to be in a completely different phase to figure out what's right for me now. What are the boundaries I need to set? What are the exercises I need to do? What are the, foods I need to eat? And I shouldn't even say need. It should be like that I want to, that serves my body in this phase. It's a lot. But I agree with you. It shouldn't be pathologized. It shouldn't be something that we feel like we need to fix. I was actually just doing a podcast interview with someone too, talking about midlife, and she said the same thing, that you're not broken
Mm,
because you feel like what you did before isn't working now. That's not a sign that you're just falling apart and broken. It's a sign that you're in a new phase, that you just have to find what works best for you now. And I do think, again, haven't gone through it yet myself, but what I hear from so many women is that it's also a time to just like shed the negative things too, like the people pleasing and the perfectionism and, trying to do things a certain way just because it's really more of like a reclaiming of who
mm,
you truly are and speaking your voice finally and having more time to finally take care of yourself and really learning to prioritize yourself. It can also be a really amazing, beautiful time to come back to you. And so I think there's a lot of incredible things that come from it too.
mhm.
And I think there's a whole purpose too. Like humans go through menopause for a reason. Not every animal does. And so it just shows that we're not just for reproduction. We're not just to grow other humans. We're also here to do other things. And I think we come into so much wisdom in menopause and when we're not worrying about our reproduction anymore. So I think just having some openness to that too and just like allowing that process to happen, you can also come into your like ultimate state of being during this time. So
I
just be
can't
ready for
wait.
it, right?
Yeah, I can't wait.
Already in my 40s, like even my early 40s, like suddenly when I hit 40, I was like, I care so much less about stupid shit. Like I just don't care as much anymore. And I'm like, thank God, finally. Because I was always a people pleaser,
Mm.
always like shy and worried about what other people thought. And suddenly I was just like, I can't care anymore. There were bigger things here. Like I feel a purpose in myself that goes beyond my own fears, seeing my kids and things like that. I'm like, there's so much more here that is not worth just, staying small for. So it's awesome.
Ugh, I love that so much. I feel like I've said that a zillion times on this podcast. I just love your perspective and I love the message that you carry and the wisdom that you bring already. Like menopause can wait. You still got wisdom now for sure, Miss Miranda. I love
Thanks.
it. I love it so much. Ugh, okay. I feel like that was a perfect place to end. And I'm just curious if anyone wanted to like work with you these days, how's the best way for them to get in contact with you? Like, what do you prefer?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Dr. Miranda Naylor. You can also go to my website. It's drmirandannaylor.com. So DrMirandaNaylor. It's long.com.
In the show
Um,
notes.
yeah, exactly. And I offer, free clarity calls for anyone who is interested in working with someone to be able to support this. Kind of can feel overwhelming, especially if you have some things going on in your blood work, you're not
Mhm.
really sure where to start. It can be really, really helpful to just have some strategy behind what we're doing and give you the good guidance. So we're walking hand in hand on this. So feel free to reach out. And if people have questions, I love to just, answer questions, interact with people, and really support them in taking their own journey with their longevity too.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here again. And we'll definitely have to have you on for a third round once we're
Happy
maybe
to.
both swinging in perimenopause. Just kidding. That'll be years later, but maybe earlier than that.
Yeah. Yeah. When you have your baby in hand, then we're
Ah,
changing the conversation around there. Yeah.
yes. Oh my gosh. That would be excellent. Postpartum hormones. Let's talk that.
There we go. Yep.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening and for placing your finger on the pelvic pulse. I'm Brittany Ellers. The music for this podcast was created by Just Tech, and I'm grateful you're here breathing this conversation in with me. You're invited to stay connected by following the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen, and by sharing it with someone you love. Beyond the podcast, there are 2 free spaces waiting for you: the Arousal Anatomy Adventure and my private podcast, The Pool of Presence, both designed to support you in coming back into your body and listening to what's real right now. You'll find everything linked in the show notes. Let your curiosity lead you and enter wherever you feel drawn. It's an honor to walk alongside you.